Well, we spend so much of our time trying to optimize our lives, right? But we rarely stop to actually examine the very lens through which we view, well, literally everything, our own minds. So today, in this explainer, we're diving into a genuinely profound perspective on what it means to truly break free from our mental loops. We're going to look really closely at J. Krishnamurti's radical concept of freedom. And I promise you, this is going to completely flip how you think about your own identity upside down.
So I want you to ask yourself a pretty serious question right now. Are you genuinely experiencing freedom? Or are you just living inside a psychological cage built by your own past? You know, we often think of freedom as just the ability to do whatever we want whenever we want. But what if the you that wants those things is actually operating on a deeply conditioned script? What if the choices you think you're making completely freely are actually just mechanical reactions?
And this brings us to a really striking observation from J. Krishnamurti. He pointed out that the brain is essentially a storehouse. It's the center of all our remembrance. I mean, from the exact day you were born, your brain has been accumulating experiences, acquiring knowledge, and just absorbing traditions. It acts like this massive hard drive, constantly saving files, every single argument, every success, every societal rule. And, while that's absolutely necessary for our survival, it's also exactly what creates our psychological boundaries.
So the crucial takeaway here is that our deepest bondage isn't some physical wall. No, it's the psychological baggage of the known. The known is just everything you've already experienced and categorized. Think about the last time you instantly got defensive in an argument. You weren't really reacting to the present moment, were you? You were projecting a past hurt onto the present. You were trapped in a self-repeating loop, completely cut off from anything truly new or limitless.
So, what exactly is piling up in this mental storehouse of ours? Well, it's our memories, our knee-jerk reactions, cultural traditions, and our deepest ambitions. It's kind of like a mental web browser with 1,000 tabs open, constantly filtering how you perceive reality. And what we do is we take all this stuff, wrap it up, and say, hey, this is me. It creates the illusion of a separate I, an ego that stands completely apart from the rest of the world, desperately trying to protect its own image.
Now, we absolutely have to draw a line here between the functional self and the psychological ego. We definitely need a functional self. Your functional self is just a super useful tool for daily tasks. It remembers your name, knows how to drive a car, lets you do your job. But your psychological ego, that's a false identity. That happens when consciousness falsely identifies with that storehouse of memory and says, I am my beliefs, I am my past. And this psychological ego creates a really profound sense of separation, which inevitably leads to conflict with others.
And this false identity naturally builds into a full-blown anatomy of suffering. It operates on this totally dead-end loop. Think about it. You crave a promotion, right? You get a temporary hit of pleasure when you actually get it. But that pleasure quickly morphs into a dependency. The second your new status is threatened, you experience a severe psychological contraction, a literal tightening of your identity, which ultimately just results in suffering. It's a cycle that repeatedly drags us downward into severe dependency and emotional bondage.
Now, seeing this really painful cycle, you might be wondering, okay, how do I break it? It's the most natural question in the world, right? How do I fix my mind? So we try meditation, we try strict discipline, we try controlling our thoughts. But here's the catch. Any effort by the ego to achieve some sort of spiritual goal introduces a massive, completely overlooked paradox.
See, trying to use the very entity that built the cage to somehow unlock the door is a totally flawed escape plan. It is literally like hiring a thief to guard your vault. Think about it for a second. If your ego says, I am going to become less greedy, or I'm going to destroy my ego, who is the I making that statement? It's the ego. The controller is made of the exact same stuff as what it's trying to control. It's really just the ego putting on a shiny new spiritual costume. Krishnamurti hit the nail on the head with his really powerful direct paradox. The controller is the controlled. And man, this just unmasks the illusion completely. The I that desperately wants to control your anger or conquer your desire is just another thought operating within the exact same conditioned mind. It's literally one fragment of the mind trying to dominate another fragment. And all that does is create more inner conflict and resistance. Adding a spiritual costume to the ego doesn't change what it fundamentally is.
Which leads us to Krishnamurti's most famous and honestly perhaps his most challenging realization: the observer is the observed. When you say, I'm watching my thoughts, you're actually creating a false duality. You're assuming there's an independent, real you, standing safely outside your thoughts, judging them. But there isn't. The you that is watching is just another thought constructed from memory. You literally are those thoughts. The separation is completely artificial.
Okay, I know. This can feel like hitting a brick wall.
If all our spiritual efforts, all our methods, and all our attempts at self-control are just the ego playing tricks on itself, how do we actually awaken from the bondage of the mind? I mean, if we can't do anything to free ourselves, are we just stuck?
Well, the key to this lock is a state called choiceless awareness. And this is a total pivot. It pivots entirely from trying to do something to simply seeing what is happening right now, completely without interference. Choiceless awareness means observing your jealousy, your anger, or your ambition without condemning it, without trying to change it, and without that psychological me getting involved at all. It is an intensely awake state of pure observation.
This operates on a really fascinating principle known as the via negativa, or the negative approach. See, we don't manufacture freedom by accumulating more spiritual knowledge. Instead, we experience it through this negative approach, where just perceiving the falsehood of the separate self causes it to lose its power and just fall away. When you truly see that the I is just a conditioned thought, the ground it dances on vanishes. Truth isn't something you build up, it's simply seeing the false as false and watching it dissolve. And once that false I drops away, the mind absolutely transforms. It becomes completely silent but intensely awake. It stops being this tyrant master and returns to being a brilliant, highly functional instrument. There's suddenly this tremendous inner space. Because without the constant chatter of the ego defending itself, the mind is completely open. It's potentially encountering an entirely unknown dimension of consciousness it has literally never touched before. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. You've got your notepad out, you're waiting for the roadmap, the 3 easy life hacks to achieve this state by, Tuesday. It's totally natural. Our conditioned brains are completely wired to ask for instructions. We want the syllabus.
But asking how is fundamentally the wrong approach, because how implies a method. It implies a mechanical process stretching out into the future, where you, the seeker, travel from point A to point B. But true freedom cannot be reached by mechanically repeating a method. Any method just reinforces the ego's desire to achieve and to become something else. Truth is immediate. It's entirely a matter of seeing, not becoming.
The contrast between these two paths is just stark. The traditional method relies heavily on the ego seeking a future goal through some sort of technique. But Krishnamurti points us to the pathless path. True realization isn't about the ego somehow improving itself over time. It's about the ego becoming entirely absorbed and silent in the pure immediacy of perception. It happens right now, in the immediate present, through effortless observation, completely without the me.
And when that genuine silence occurs, we actually encounter the reality of freedom. In that profound silence, consciousness isn't just empty or, blank. Quite the opposite. It's filled with an extraordinary state of beauty, power, and gentleness. And this power isn't about dominating others at all. It's a transformative energy and sensitivity that lets us engage with the world dynamically, but entirely without any inner fragmentation or conflict. Because in that state, the artificial boundary between you and the world just completely collapses. You are the world, and the world is you. This perfectly illustrates that true freedom is not about escaping the world into isolation or running away to meditate on a mountaintop. Rather, it's recognizing our indivisible oneness with all existence. You no longer view the world through a fragmented, highly defensive ego. You just participate in the drama of life masterfully, knowing you aren't separate from it. So, as we wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with this final, really provocative thought. Who is actually looking through your eyes right now? Is it just a bundle of conditioned memories, past hurts, and learned traditions reacting to the world? Or is it boundless, choiceless awareness itself, simply experiencing the present moment exactly as it is? Take a moment today to just observe. You might just find that freedom isn't something you acquire, it's simply what remains when the illusion falls away.